So much, Christian. It's really an honor for us to have had you here today on our meeting. I cannot express my gratitude enough, and I will make sure we will send you a very nice thank you gift to Copenhagen.
Thank you.
It's a pity that you weren't here around in beautiful Herentals, but I'm sure we will be able to meet again in the near future. Thanks again. Nevertheless, we have some questions for you if you would like to answer. The first one is one of my questions as a surgeon. And my question is, do you have any knowledge or advice upon hamstring injuries after we as surgeons harvested one of these hamstring tendons, the semitendinosus mostly, for ACL surgery? Do you have any evidence on what happens to this neo-hamstring myotendinous junction, or advice on how to deal with this?
I mean, in relation to hamstring injuries, there is a little bit of an increased risk to get a hamstring injury if you have that kind of graft used, but it's actually not that dramatic. I think the issue of the hamstring graft is a little bit a different discussion, which is probably also more related to ACL rehab and the discussion you just had on the panel as well. I don't think it's not such a big problem in relation to getting hamstring injuries after using this graft. You can always, I think it's pretty aggressive to the kind of how you actually harvest that tendon and that muscle. And we also have some studies from Denmark, and there's other studies as well that shows that sometimes it actually doesn't grow back. That changes the kinematics completely around the knee, but I think that's actually a bigger problem in relation to your knee stability than it is in relation to getting a new hamstring injury. I think that's probably the short answer.
Okay, thank you, Christian. I also had some other questions. Maybe in terms of the compliance of the Nordic hamstring program, we saw that was not really good. Do you have any reasons for that, or general beliefs around training or muscle soreness that could be the reason why people would not take this up? Because it only takes a few minutes, as you say. Yeah? So why do you think, especially at the elite level, people don't do it?
So I think we have to be careful. It's actually not just at the elite level that people don't do it. I think this is a general problem in football and in the football world. It's actually difficult to implement something like this in the football world because it's not related to football and performance. I think so. I've been in this world for a long time, and you have to have the coaches on board. So I think that's probably the main barrier, is that if you don't have coaches on board, this is not going to get done, because you need to sort of implement it in practice in a way that it doesn't influence with how the coach he wants to plan his practice and the season. And I think that's very fair. So I think that the main barrier is probably that we haven't been good enough to get the coaches on board, and also to equip them with the right sort of knowledge to actually use this kind of prevention. I think in relation to professional football, there's lots of arguments for why they are not doing it, and delayed onset muscle soreness is one of the excuses, if so to say. But if you do any kind of eccentric strength training, and that's good evidence for that, you will get the same kind of soreness as you get from Nordics. It's very difficult to protect your hamstring muscles and your adductor muscles and your tendons if you don't use any kind of eccentric principle. So I think soreness is that's part of the adaptation that we want, and this is something that coaches, players, physical trainers need to understand. But of course, we need to do it at the right time in the right amount.
Thank you. Oh.
So another question, Christian, from Michael van Grieken, one of the local sport physiotherapists around here. His question is, where do you stand on pain during rehab? Meaning, should pain be avoided at all costs, or are small amounts of pain okay during rehab? And secondly, do you use pain as an indicator to make your return to play possible?
Yes, it depends actually a little bit on what kind of injury we're talking about. I would say that, and also how much pain. But in general, if you've had an injury and you're going to rehab it, and especially if you're going to put load through the system in the area where the injury is, you will feel it. The player will feel this, and it will feel different from if you haven't had an injury. So I think you need to discuss this with your players. And I usually say that it's okay if it feels like something is tightening, might pinch a little bit, it might be a little bit painful, but I don't want them to stop doing the exercise. If they look very painful on their face expression, I think you have to stop it. But you will need to have the discussion that you're actually going to feel this a bit. So, and if you want to put it on a scale, we're usually down in the area from 0 to 10 I allow everything up to 3. Usually that's sort of a rule of thumb. But again, it's a little bit difficult to say because on a doctor rehab, I'm probably sometimes a little bit more cautious if they have something related to the bone, whereas on the hamstring, I'm probably less cautious if it's in the muscle. So again, generally, I will tell them that you are going to feel this a little bit. It's going to feel a little bit tight, or you can feel your muscle and working in an area where you've had an injury. So I allow pain to some degree, yes.
Okay, thank you, Christian. One other question. So now you focus a lot on strength development, strength improvements, doing your prevention and rehabilitation exercises. Do you think there is room for other parts of exercises or other ways of training? I know there is some discussion. Some people are more focusing on some movement quality, some are more maybe on strength. Do you think there is a individualized perfect way to do it, or do you think it's just strength?
I think in relation to the 2 injuries I just showed you, so hamstring injuries and also adductor injuries in football, I think there is an important strength element, and also the risk factor is actually decreased eccentric strength, especially for the adductors. In the hamstring, it's more debatable. But I also think in relation to the tissue adaptation that you would want, and theoretically how you would like to improve the ability of players to actually absorb force through the system, I think strength training is the only thing that can actually sort of improve that capacity. But I wouldn't, if you have the FIFA 11 program, you have some of the other elements as well. So it's not that I think strength training is the only thing you should do for injury prevention in general, but I think for some injuries, especially these muscle tendinous injuries, I think it plays a very important part in trying to build up capacity. And I also think that's why you get such dramatic injury prevention from doing just one thing.
Okay, thank you.
Perfect. Okay, Christian, I think because of time reasons, we would like to close this discussion down. Again, thank you so much for being with us today here. And I hope to have you soon in Belgium in the near future. Thanks again. I would also like to, ik ga nu het woord dus geven aan Dr. Stefan Verfaay om een afscheidswoordje te brengen bij deze meeting. Tot ziens.
Dank u wel, Steven. Beste collega's, beste kinesitherapeuten. We zijn dus aan het einde gekomen van ons 6e sportcongres. Zoals reeds gezegd door mijn voorgangers hebben we zeer lang getwijfeld van gaan we dit sportcongres wel organiseren, gaan we dit laten doorgaan, hoe gaan we dit doen? De zaal lag al vast en iedereen dacht in oktober zal alles wel over zijn. Gelukkig zijn we zeer blij dat we 6 maanden geleden ongeveer toch beslist hebben om voor deze formule te gaan. Bewijs jullie massale deelname. Ik denk dat we aan 550 inschrijvingen zaten. En mede dankzij jullie massale inschrijvingen zijn we nu al fier op het eindresultaat. Ik wil nogmaals de sponsors danken, want het is toch niet evident voor hen om in deze tijden naar een online meeting deze financieel te steunen. En alhoewel het is zeer belangrijk voor ons om dit te kunnen organiseren. En ik wil dan ook graag toch vragen dat jullie de tijd zouden nemen om de evaluatieformulieren die online zullen opgestuurd worden in te vullen en toe te sturen. Dit is voor ons allemaal nieuw. En we zijn ervan overtuigd dat we nog steeds kunnen verbeteren. Dus alsjeblieft stuur de formulieren in, zodat we de volgende keer nog beter kunnen zijn. Zoals jullie al gehoord hebben, is het ook mogelijk om de presentaties nog zeker 6 maanden via dezelfde link terug te herbekijken. Mogelijk nadien op onze website, waarschijnlijk, maar de eerste 6 maanden zeker op de link die jullie gekregen hebben. En dan wil ik tenslotte nog enkele personen bedanken, uiteraard. In de eerste plaats Toon Klaas. Toon is 30 jaar diensthoofd geweest. Een record dat ik zeker niet zal verbreken. Toon ligt aan de basis van sporttraumatologie en sportorthopedie in België. Toon heeft ook ons sportcongres mee opgericht, zoveel jaar geleden. Maar geen paniek, zoals Toon al zelf zei, hij blijft zeker nog 2 jaar bij ons op de dienst werken. En zal voor ons een belangrijke link zijn en blijven naar de sportwereld. Bedankt, Toon. Ik wil ook de 2 ondertussen legendarische Philippen bedanken. Iedereen kent ze ondertussen, Philippe Bataille en Philippe Claessens, voor de weerpuiken organisatie. Het is denk ik niet eenvoudig voor hen geweest om dit concept volledig te herdenken. En hiermee samen ook dank aan de PFL-crew die hele technische ondersteuning gedaan hebben. Voor hen misschien niet zo moeilijk, maar voor ons toch wel heel verrassend en vernieuwend. Ook een beetje moeilijk om tegen camera's te praten en zo. Dank u, crew. En tenslotte, last but not least, mijn collega Steven Klaas wil ik bedanken. Steven heeft zijn schouders onder dit congres gezet. Steven heeft zo goed als al het werk gedaan, denk ik. Het programma samengesteld, de sprekers aangehaald en nog veel meer. Dank u, Steven, voor al uw werk. Normaal zouden we nu iets kunnen gaan eten en drinken, maar dit zal dit jaar dus spijtig genoeg niet kunnen doorgaan. Ik wens jullie allemaal thuis dan smakelijk eten, een prettig weekend nog. En tot een volgende. We zullen wel zien hoe, waar, wanneer, dat is nog even in de toekomst kijken. We hebben daar nog geen antwoord op, zoals jullie wel zullen begrijpen. Dank u wel allemaal. Tot de volgende.